This changes everything about how we can view Ukraine's status in this war. It also explains some of the strategy that Russia has been employing. If we read them in the light of this leak, then they actually explain the strategy. So this is a really interesting Twitter thread. I've been somewhat pessimistic about Ukraine's chances. Pessimistic not in the sense that I think Ukraine's defeat is guaranteed, as some people have been saying. I genuinely believe they do have a chance of winning this war. Once again, it's a defensive war. Their win condition is much simpler than Russia's. However, from far away, it seemed to look like Russia has a much stronger army. Now, someone brought to my attention this Twitter thread that is really interesting. So yeah, this is from former Chief of Defense of Estonia, member of European Parliament, Riho Terras, Deputy Coordinator for the EP Special Committee on Artificial Intelligence, and European Parliament Committee on Agriculture, Committee on Industry, Research, Telecoms. Viva Ukraina, out Russia and out invader Putin. Slava Ukraina. From the EPP Group Party. So I could masturbate, and I could be in pain and like breathing, like spitting my lungs out. WC. Thanks for the follow, Rei de la Repubblica. Any updates? I haven't followed any of the news today, so I'm kind of in the dark, just catching up. I only read like the first like couple tweets to get an idea of what this is. I'm trying to keep it off my mind, to be honest. Yeah, me too. On just a purely human level, covering this for what basically was 25 hours out of 48 hours, I cannot continue with the whole breaking news meta, or at least today I really needed the break. So yeah, I feel you, man. I understand you totally. Intel from a Ukrainian officer about a meeting in Putin's lair in the Urals. Oligarchs convened there so no one would flee. Putin is furious. He thought that the whole war would be easy and everything would be done in 1 to 4 days. If this is true, this changes everything about how we can view Ukraine's status in this war. Russians didn't have a tactical plan. The war costs about $20 billion a day. There are rockets for 3 to 4 days at most. They use them sparingly. They lack weapons. The Tula and 2 Rotenberg plans can't physically fulfill the orders for weapons. Rifles and ammo are the most they can do. The next Russian weapons can be produced in 3 to 4 months, if even that. They have no raw materials. What was previously supplied mainly from Slovenia, Finland, and Germany is now cut off. If Ukraine manages to hold the Russians off for 10 days, then the Russians will have to enter negotiations, because they have no money, weapons, or resources. Nevertheless, they are indifferent about the sanctions. Alpha Spec Ops have been near Kyiv since the 18th of February. The goal was to take Kyiv and install a puppet regime. They are preparing provocations against innocent civilians, women and children, to sow panic. This is the trump card. Russia's whole plan relies on panic, that the civilians and armed forces surrender and Zelensky flees. They expect Kharkiv to surrender first, so the other cities would follow suit to avoid bloodshed. The Russians are in shock at the fierce resistance they have encountered. The Ukrainians must avoid panic. The missile strikes are for intimidation. The Russians fire them at randomly to accidentally hit residential buildings to make the attack look larger than it really is. Ukraine must stay strong and we must provide assistance. Spread this information so the world would realize how important it is to assist Ukraine right now, and without hesitation. It is difficult for Russia, but it is difficult for Ukraine as well, if the West does not provide meaningful support. I am skeptical of this. This is just a Twitter thread. This is hearsay. I don't doubt that Riho Terras is a reliable source himself, as a former Chief of Defense of Estonia, and that he himself has reliable sources, but it is intel from a Ukrainian officer about a meeting in Putin's lair. So we are more than 2 steps removed from the actual original source. That being said, if this is true, Ukraine's position is really strong. So now I explained why I think you need to take this with a grain of salt. But flipping it around, if this is true, then it also explains some of the strategy that Russia has been employing. So what we covered in the first 24 hours was multiple airdrops, dropping Russian special forces in Gostomel airport, for example, in Vasilkiv airbase, which apparently, according to UA live maps, is perhaps under Russian control. This kind of strategy, where you're airdropping elite troops to take control of an airbase right next to the right next to the target, the opponent's capital, you're obviously seeking to decapitate the country right off the bat. I think it's pretty clear. If the Russians had managed to hold on to Gostomel airport and reinforce their troops that got airdropped there, they would have had a foothold right on Kyiv's doorstep, which they now have, but they had to fight for it. That already is a huge difference. Anyways, why I'm talking about those attempts, I'm talking about them because if we read them in the light of this leak, then they actually explain the strategy. They actually explain why you would throw elite troops without proper support, like a Zerg rush at your opponent's base. You're trying to win the war in a couple days, maximum. That's what it looks like. Now, without that information, my reading of that is more like a calculated risk type of operation, where if Russia is not as if Russia is not as desperate as those as the Riho Terras is claiming, then it's still plausible to engage in those kinds of tactics. It's kind of like low probability, but if it fails, you haven't lost that much, and if it succeeds, then you win a lot. You end the war before before taking that many casualties, etc. So there's two ways of reading the whole situation in light of this, and what's happened still is plausible either way. I'm interested if other sources will come to corroborate this or not. Corroboration from other reliable sources would definitely lend it a lot of weight. In any case, once again, if this is true, this changes everything. Chelsea Manning is saying something similar. Interesting. If this is true, this changes everything. If this is true, Ukraine is in many ways winning the war already.